but this system is certainly built to handle infrastructure change, and we're getting to the point where it's development change, that type of thing. So what I'm going to show you, I already have a demo set up. Something else I'm working on, I'm going to show how a code deployment would come through. But as we go forward, so you can see how the constructs that I'm going to show you can apply to any type of deployment, can apply to any type of infrastructure change. The reason being is that we've set the system up to where it has certain levels of understanding of what you're trying to do. So it essentially may present you with different content in menu items depending on what you're doing. So the system will actually realize that as you go through the encoding sequence. So what I'm going to do again, I'm just going to run through one. This one would be a development change. We talked last week about the different levels of, or the different models for approval. We have a foundation model, which always has two tiers of approval. We have a conditional, which is the foundation plus whatever condition we can come up with, and you could have dozens and dozens of approvals. And then you have your situationals, which are expedite and emergency. Again, every progressive model overlays the one or two before. So what you see on your screen right now is really just the base change console, and consoles are set up by different types of filtering. There's 3 levels of filtering, and it's rather robust, and you can concatenate your filters. Once you establish a filter, you could actually save it off and name it. That way you could look at multiple filtering over a period of time without actually having to enter it over and over again. So for example, if I only wanted to see APTP changes, I would be able to filter that says only show me APTP changes, that type of thing. So from this console, I'm just going to open a new change. This is going to bring us to the base change system, or the base change screen. Now, I'm working on a smaller monitor here, so you'll see how it actually scrolls up and down here. But this is your base screen. This is where all your data entry is going to occur, but it's also where the coordinator manipulates the change through the workflow. The coordinator in this particular case is going to stay with the developer, but the coordinator typically is that team and or person that is responsible for execution of the change. Excuse me. Before I go into this, what I want to point out here as I'm showing you my cursor, again, for those people who are not familiar with ITSM, ITSM is first and foremost is a workflow tool, and it's also based upon certain roles and responsibilities. This bar across the top is the workflow toolbar. So it tells me at any given time what stage or phase that I'm in the change lifecycle itself. Then within each stage or phase, there are substates. So there's a combination of the substate and the primary stage that gives us our overall status progression. This is also in the documentation that I sent out, went over last week, and sent out. It shows you how the workflow operates. So one of the things you'll notice right away, I have this set up to where the coordinator group and the change coordinator will default to the person opening the ticket. You can change it at any given time, but we find a lot of people open changes to themselves. It's just a nice little shortcut. In order to do that, coordinator groups are set up in terms of first and foremost company. Now you'll notice this says Broadridge and IBM Corp. This will also say IBM UK for our infrastructure teams that may have to send something over to IBM UK as an assignee. But if I look at Broadridge, there's a number of different, you take it to the second level, again, this is all hierarchical structures. So we always start with the company and then the tower or the group that it's in, and then the actual support groups themselves. So in this particular case, it's voting and e-delivery, which I can find under core systems for ICS. So I'm just going to keep that. But if I wanted to say, give this over to EJ, I'm going to come over here and find EJ. And you have to know these. ODS SSA, and there's EJ's group. But I don't necessarily have to give it a coordinator. I just give it to the group, and they figure out what they want to do with it. Let me get back to where it was. The next thing a person does is identify the service. You'll see a combination of technical service designations and business service designations. We are in the process of sunsetting these technical service designations. Kevin, don't freak out, not for a while. And moving to much more towards a business level of service designation. From the point of view of the common the regular change user, probably doesn't matter. We use this for trending, if you will. So we're actually able to trend in a hierarchical level. This is for APTP. This is going to be Security Processing Solutions. They may even be an SPSI business service. I haven't decided on that yet. Summary, quite simple. Some title of your change. And then descriptive notes. Now,
yeah, and again, I just want to, not to derail this, and as long as we create it as a sidebar, I want to make sure that we highlight the fact that SSA manages their changes, their docket, utilizing a local database. And so I think it would behoove us, to build that process. I don't know if it's day one, but to say the least by October, because it's something that's going to have to be in place, as you know, Steve, in order to successfully migrate from Infoman to ITSM.
I have it as a mid-June to late June deliverable to Adrian.
Awesome.
So yeah, we're aware of that, and we'll be sending him that file. One of the things here, you'll see summary and notes. These are just basic fields. But I want to point out before I go forward something that ITSM does, which I particularly like. So unlike other systems that we may be using, the intent here is not to use this notes field as a place to just continually do updates, forcing people to kind of sift through and try to glean content out of it. The system has a whole tab here called Work Detail. So while you're opening it, you're going to get some descriptive notes. You'll notice it's not even a required element like summary is. Work Detail is where you really start to get into things. Now I'm just going to show you real quick. A work detail is made. Yes.
So can we, for just an open question, so can we make notes, the notes field required, because it is essential to, okay, and the second question is, wouldn't that, because I held a meeting, I'm sorry if I left you off this, but the importance of an MDS, the importance of an MDS form, particularly for tabs, is essential. So in other words, there has to be this certain information in each change report that, so I see what you're doing. So do you agree, Steve, that would be a good place to cut and paste the MDS form?
Incident where it auto-populates the elements, and then do you want to do that here?
I actually do, because that came up in our conversations, like, okay, it's all well and good that someone's expected to cut and paste data into a field, but can that pop up prefab?
We can. Yeah, we do that in incident right now. So let me go forward. So you have work detail, and I'm going to come back to this over and over again, and I'm watching my clock. But work detail is where you can also do free form, but also attachments. But you're able to identify the content of what you're presenting either to the reviewer or presenting it to the implementer or whomever you're presenting it to. And you do this by a construct called a work info type. So you're actually identifying what type of information is being presented. You'll see it defaults to a general information, but we've created a number of these. So for example, install plan. So that's my work info type. So here, as a person opening the change, or perhaps opening it to yourself and giving it to someone else, here's my install instructions that I'm providing for this change.
Right, and again, I'm going to be a pain in the ass and ask that, if possible, this should be a hard control. So if there are certain elements that we require, that if we should idiot-proof it, quote unquote, we should idiot-proof the system so that they don't leave out, for instance, install plan, backup plan, or what else, the test plan, that type of deal.
Got it, and we can certainly do that. So we do it by type, that's what we say. So what I'm doing here...
Can I say something at this time?
Go ahead, sure.
The notes for the installation instructions, we find that, sometimes they need to be changed at the very last minute And it came through a strong suggestion from product assurance to make installation documentation updatable without any kind of approval, that the development teams have a green light to update their documentation.
That goes.
The second part
That's a discussion we're going to have because that goes directly against what I'm getting from governance.
Okay.
It
All right.
sure-
And,
it
and,
sure
and,
does.
and I encourage that we have that conversation.
Yeah.
I just don't know how. I just don't know how efficient either way would be or compliant. But the second part is usually when the developers are working with a template, when they're doing documentation, they're changing only a couple things because it's very cookie cutter what they're doing.
Yeah.
And the template is merely guidelines, EJ. So it's not like there's data already posted in the release, for instance. So it's just guiding you to give the pertinent data. And if there's any data that is required, an acceptable answer would not be NA, for instance. So again, we could take that away and talk about it. But I hear what you're saying, and they're not going to be giving you old data.
I'll tell you something right now, though. From a pure ITEL standpoint, you have an install plan, a test plan, a backup plan, and I'm going to show you a few other info types. Once that is approved, even at the first level, it should be locked down. If anybody has to make a change, you move the change all the way back to draft. Make your change and resubmit it for approval. That's the best practice here. But this meeting's not about that, so let's kind of shelve that if you will.
Yep.
Yeah. There are other types of work info, but we talked about those three main. So you may have change assessment, you may have a risk assessment, and as Kevin points out, as we go forward, we'll make, under certain conditions, we'll say, hey, no, you need to have a risk assessment, those types of things. But even as you move forward through the workflow, you have your install results that you can record, your test results, your backup results, etc. We also have we have our own compliance audits and everything else that we do internally. But we also have other types of information, general information, rejection information. Now we have some customization that we've done for mainframe. So it's like, what are my ship to JP Morgan instructions? What's my impact to Canada? What are my instructions for DB2 binds, for scheduling, for file allocations? So all of these things, in order to make sure that everybody understands it, you're going to select it as a type and provide your instructions. In that way, you're making it more efficient for people who need access to this information. You don't have to go through an exhaustive notes field, which may have multiple entries on multiple topics. I could just go right to where I want to go and take a look at it. So that's
right. And the notes field doesn't have chronology, folks. So this is fantastic when it comes to that, because you know precisely when the entry was made. And just an FYI, I want to beat on this drum from day one. If you reject or cancel a change, you must enter a rejection or cancellation entry into the work detail area. Because if you don't, you just have tickets floating out there, and folks don't know why the change was rejected or canceled.
We're also working on, along those lines, I'm also looking on we're going to have to do it together, a pull down reject reason. So you can say, here's your standard reject reason plus the information. So anyway, I'm still going through and I'm creating this ticket. So I'm creating this, I got my install plans and everything else. And I'm staying on the main screen, although I am going to navigate over to other areas. So I come down here, my next thing is I'm going to set my class. What is a change class? Change class is I'm emergency, I'm expedited, I'm normal. Don't worry about these other ones. The system will default to normal. What does normal mean? This is a planned change. I don't want to get into the conversation of lead times, because lead times are variable. This system does have the ability to police lead time. So if you try to do something and you're in a given area and you're saying, I want to do it this weekend, when your lead time for normal